Aikido is thought to be the worst martial art by pretty much most people. So naturally, I found a place that would teach me Aikido.
Hold on 5 and slightly twist, 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 twist.
And I'm gonna see how much I can make work after learning it for only a day.
So, we start seated in the seated position. Okay. So the first break fall is your back break fall. Just remember to clench your chin tuck and we slap the mat, palm down.
The first thing we worked on was break falls, which makes sense with how much they get thrown around.
Back up, fall other side. And I'm protecting my head just in case.
Break falls aren't the hardest thing in the world. They're important, but not the hardest. So pretty quickly I was ready to rock and roll. Cool. So, do you guys have like a fighting stance? It's the peaceful art, right?
It is. The Aikido means the way of harmony and energy.
Okay.
Okay, so there's not supposed to be any attack.
Right.
So traditional Aikido, your kamae, your posture is about right here.
Okay.
Our version, we just bring the hands up a little bit.
Is there a reason the hands are
Correct.
so low?
This would be this.
Ah.
So when you take that out, here's
That makes
your
sense.
posture.
Because the blade is what's
Correct.
covering up your middle.
Yes, sir.
But we'll get back to the blade stuff in a minute. Before we get super in-depth on the history of Aikido, I think it's kind of important you learn the history of this guy who's teaching.
A 5th degree black belt in karate. I have a 1st degree black belt in taekwondo. I have a 1st degree black belt in pankration, 1st degree black belt in Brazilian jiu-jitsu. I have a 5th degree black belt in what's called All Japan Submission Fighting, 3rd degree black belt in Submission Arts Wrestling, coach level 1 in CSW, Filipino weapons. I'm a 5th degree or master instructor under Progressive Martial Arts, and then I'm also a apprentice level 3 instructor under Ron Balicki.
How do you remember all that?
I don't.
Okay. Which essentially means he has a pretty good grasp of what works and what doesn't, which is going to be helpful for when he's teaching us Aikido.
Now we move into our positions. So we have first, we call an arimi. Arimi means to enter.
A lot of the movements that come with Aikido tend to seem very over-exaggerated, so this is the kind of stuff that I'm really going to want to test later.
This hand is coming to your elbow, and the secret here is to push your elbow into their nose. When I push, I'm pushing you straight through. Push it into my nose, and that's where you have it. Now we have what we call a tenkan. I put my hands in this way, step, let your hands come out, and then step again, and your hands come back.
Walking through these movements, I was feeling a little skeptical. Does this seem like something you could actually pull off in real life? I'm interested to see how literal of a sense turning all the way through is.
Throw your arm. There you go. Here. And then there, and now cut. Boom. Bam.
I'm probably not doing my best job of hiding it, but my skepticism is still there. I'm kind of like I'm spinning, right? I don't know. Maybe I'm being overly critical. Let's go back to the swords.
So a lot of it comes from like the ability to draw. And as I'm drawing, because it's combat, you're stopping me. So we're here.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, okay, I can no longer draw. What's my next move? Well, my next move is to redirect.
Yeah.
And make something happen.
Right.
If I'm in my kamae, as you thrust, I circle.
Yeah.
And I get out of that line.
Right.
And understanding blades, as long as you're not here,
okay,
I can make that motion.
Right. And I'm realizing this little bit of context that it used to be about swords and not just fists or grappling. It makes these big exaggerated movements make more sense.
And then of course, Ikkyo or whatever is going to trans afterwards.
Got it. Come later. It seems like a lot of Aikido practitioners blame bad Aikido on the fact that it's designed for the sword. How do you adapt it where it's not designed for the sword anymore? And it's practical without this?
I think doing it in randori.
Okay.
So randori is sparring. We had that ball and space theory and we start there.
Yep.
And then we get into more of the boxing.
Sure.
And then you get into multiple opponents and then what they're allowed to do. We're allowed to grab the shoulders, the wrist, we're allowed to straight punch, or we're allowed to chop, we're allowed to kick.
Okay. This randori that he's talking about is good practice, but it's also going to be probably the first indicator on whether or not I'm going to be able to make some of this stuff work later. But before we could do that, I had a couple more things to learn.
Thumb over the fingers, fingers over the thumb, so it's secured.
Gotcha.
Maybe you're fighting me.
Yeah.
That's Nikyo.
Okay.
Bring your elbows in, now like you're gonna bow.
Got it.
If we're tied up, like you can catch a wrist lock if they don't let go.
Yeah.
If they do let go, now I go here. or I can switch it to here. And I love getting that in ground fighting. Like I'll turn and catch the next one, Sankyo, all the time.
And it makes sense because your hands are
already connected.
Already connected. So for the next 15 to 20 minutes, we worked on those wrist locks from a BJJ perspective, working with the gi, grappling from the bottom, and getting submissions that aren't normally used in jiu-jitsu but are super prevalent in Aikido. And right after that, we moved on to catching kicks using the same circular movements we were using before. Yeah, that's pretty sick.
We did Ikkyo and Ikkyo.
Okay.
Now we're gonna do Sankyo.
You're welcome.
So now you're nice and tall, so you're gonna have to duck.
Okay.
But pretend like you're opening a door.
Okay.
Now I step through said door, and there's your lock.
Okay.
Remember the Tenkan thing, right? So we turned back, and then that leg comes back.
Once again, I'm kind of in this space where I don't think that's gonna work. Unless I'm super jacked like that, but which I am, but that's neither here nor there. To finish off our day, we're going to perform the randori that he spoke about.
Okay, you ready?
Yep. To explain the randori as someone who's like not super good at it, I would say it's kind of similar to being attacked by a zombie that doesn't really have any teeth. But you're allowed to practice your moves on it, which is useful. And eventually, I guess the more you do randori, the bigger the teeth of the zombie get. But for now, he's got no teeth. I do like a lot of these techniques. Like this one, I'm a fan of, but a lot of them, I'm not my favorite. But to be fair, I'm not very good at them.
I'm impressed with you. I'm very impressed with you.
If you're curious at all what this is supposed to look like, this is a good example. But anyway, I said my goodbyes with Mr. JD, I headed home and studied what I had learned. I have a lot of respect for JD. He's incredibly experienced in martial arts, so I'm interested to see how this goes. I have some trust that I want to put in him, but there's always a little bit of skepticism that goes into, and probably should go into, stuff like this. Right off the bat, first minute of rolling, I get the first head and arm entrance movement, but I couldn't quite finish it. Well, okay, eventually I did, but it was a little different. I have some slight variation of a wrist lock here. I'm trying to get a throw. I'm not really super committing to it, and then he pulls guard, which does not happen. That is not allowed. That is not something that happens against me. Don't get it twisted. Next, I worked on wrist locks from the bottom. Mike does a good job of posting on his forehead, but I use it as a transitional tool to try and get to a triangle, which he gets out of. I'm not good at jiu-jitsu. Next, this young buck calls me out and then tries to hit me with a tomonage, also not allowed. So I get both hands on one of his sleeves and I'm trying to work on my Sankyo. But that doesn't work. I try and get it again, also doesn't work. I'm gonna try some stuff on you and I want you to guess what it is. Okay, ready to go. Now JD mentioned that a lot of the stuff works best with a gi, but I did want to try no gi against a wrestler and just kind of see what it felt like. And to my surprise, I was able to get to this position again, but I should have been doing this instead of going for a hip toss like I had done the whole day. Jake and I were fighting hands, but I wasn't able to get any specific wrist locks from standing. He gets me in a body lock. I managed to get out of it by being oh so strong. I tried to assume an Aikido-ish position with my feet fairly close and my hands low, but I was no match for the double. But now I'm on the bottom, so let's try and work some more of those wrist locks. And I actually see a little bit of success here. I reach across just like he taught me. I try and pin the hand to my chest and then work that elbow over top while keeping the hand pinned. And you can definitely see he's uncomfortable. He's not loving this. I'm not able to do anything with that one, but he does grab me again, which I can use another lock and transition to a better position. What was I doing?
Wrist control.
If you had to guess a style.
Wing Chun.
Aikido.
Close.
I would say a lot of this stuff actually, like, I feel like it has merit. The only thing that I would switch up is how narrow the stance was and how easy it was for him to double leg me. But granted, I hadn't been doing this while getting punched yet. All of these were a little bit harder, so I'm going to try and break it up into things that I tried. This leg sweep, I was definitely able to pivot out and catch a decent bit of kicks. I'm always a little bit nervous on trying stuff on people who don't know what I'm doing, so I think I got that one. I would classify what I'm doing here as kind of like a hard pivot as I move out. That was definitely doable. Surprisingly, this thing I was probably most skeptical about is what I liked the most. I would use it to make people fight my post, then I would turn that elbow and throw a left high kick, trying to turn their body into what I was kicking. And for the most part, it actually worked decently well. And for the one I think I did the worst job at... But to me, this is where it really gets interesting, because I got some of the stuff to work to a certain degree, and I'd only been training it for a day. Granted, I have a great big base of martial arts that I could fill in the gap with. But why wasn't I making people fly across the room like they do in these videos? Well, weirdly enough, I kinda did, but only once. And it's probably not when you thought it was. Seemingly in Aikido, that super dramatic, over-the-top flying that comes from a wrist lock, it comes by choice.
Here, and at this point now, that side break fall we did earlier comes into play.
Yep.
Because you have to make a choice. Do you dislocate your shoulder or do you fall on the ground?
So it's not necessarily like, oh, if I do this to a random person,
They're not going to know.
they're going to do that.
When I had people, when I taught Aikido regularly, when I had people go up for like their brown belts and stuff like that,
Yep.
I would pull my jiu-jitsu students to do the randori because they don't know what's supposed to happen.
Yeah, right.
And I was like,
they don't know the rules of,
you got to make it work.
Cool.
Because the guy in the street's not going to just tap. So you're going to have to realize when things are going too far or he's going to fall wrong or deal with it.
Gotcha. So the fall... This was incredibly fun. I think JD taught me a version of Aikido that I prefer from what I've seen. Please make sure you go check out his YouTube channel below to say thank you for teaching me all this stuff. Until next time, subscribe or I'll kick you. Bang!